Hey guys, tonight we drift straight into a world of clattering kettles, coal dust mornings, and the soft shuffle of boots on cold flagstones as you find yourself standing in the dim, blue-gray dawn of a Victorian kitchen. The fire isn't even awake yet, but you are, blinking as if you've been yanked out of sleep and shoved into someone else's day. Your eyes sting a little from the chill, and your breath leaves faint ghosts in the air. It's far too early for any sane modern person to be functional, and you probably won't survive this daily schedule without turning into a decorative fainting exhibit. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge forward into the kitchen like someone who's forgotten how doors and gravity work. The rough stone floor presses through the thin soles of your boots, and the scent of last night's embers lingers. Charred, smoky, but familiar in a strangely comforting way. Water from the pitcher waits in a heavy ceramic jug, cold enough to stun your fingertips. All around, the room is still and expectant, as if the walls themselves know what kind of labor you're about to perform. You're not just visiting a Victorian household. Tonight, you are the housewife of this place, the one who wakes first, long before the household or the city or the sun decides to bother joining you. There's a faint drip from somewhere, maybe a loose gutter, maybe the eternal leak that no one has ever successfully fixed in the scullery. You've already accepted that this is your life now. Good luck. Your morning tasks spill out in front of you. Rekindling the fire, heating water, preparing breakfast, managing the laundry that somehow multiplies overnight just to spite you, keeping the children fed and vaguely alive, and performing 1,000 tiny acts that ensure the household doesn't collapse into medieval chaos. And the best part? You haven't even had tea yet. You strike a match, the sulfur scratching sharply against the box, and the tiny flame flares like it's shouting good morning too loudly for the hour. You coax the fire to life, feeling the heat slowly thaw your knuckles. As the flames catch, your muscles protest, a little ache along the spine that whispers, "You deserve a bed still." But there's no time for that. Not yet. A mainstream fact slips naturally into your morning. Victorian households often ran on strict domestic schedules, and the lady of the house, or the working-class wife, had to maintain order from dawn to dusk without any modern conveniences. Everything took longer. Everything required more steps. Everything was louder. Even the kettle is judging you. But as you work, you notice tiny pockets of stillness. Those brief seconds between steps when your body wants to sag just a little. Lean on the counter. Close your eyes. Pretend you're resetting your soul. These micro-rests are the quiet seeds of what will eventually become the afternoon nap. You don't know it yet, but you're inventing it with every exhausted blink. The air warms slowly, the fire crackling like it's applauding your survival. You set bread to toast, grind coffee beans if you're wealthy enough, or shovel cheaper chicory substitute if you're not, and listen to the faint hum of the household waking. A child coughs somewhere upstairs. A door thuds. Someone calls your name. But for the moment, you're alone with your thoughts and the unrelenting rhythm of duty. A quirky tidbit slips in while you bustle about. Some Victorian manuals insisted women maintain cheerful domestic dispositions, which basically meant smiling while performing tasks that would break a modern triathlete. Imagine folding laundry while pretending you're in a toothpaste commercial. No pressure. Yet historians still argue whether these expectations were truly internalized or if women found subtle ways to resist them. Tiny rebellions like letting the bread sit an extra minute so you could breathe, or taking a suspiciously long time to fetch something from the upstairs linen cupboard. Maybe these slowdowns weren't laziness. Maybe they were proto-naps. You haul the laundry basin closer, dipping your hands into water that feels like melted snow. It stings, but you get used to it. Sort of. The sun hasn't fully risen, but the windows are brightening, dust motes swirling like lazy galaxies in the morning light. You feel the heaviness behind your eyelids again, a gentle pull as if the universe is asking, "What if we paused? Just a second." But you push through, because that's what Victorian housewives do. Time is rigid, chores endless, and expectations impossible. You move with practiced efficiency. Lift, scrub, rinse, wring, and occasionally fantasize about flopping face first into the laundry pile, letting the wet sheets smother you into blessed unconsciousness. As the morning unfolds, you keep your pace steady. The fire needs tending, the table needs setting, the household requires managing, and yet, beneath it all, a quiet truth begins to form. This life is exhausting in a way that modern schedules don't quite replicate, and exhaustion always invents solutions. It's here, in the rhythm of your chores, in the steady hum of effort, in the constant layering of domestic responsibility, that the earliest foundations of the afternoon nap begin. Not as luxury, not as self-care, but as survival. By the time the household has fully stirred, boots clomping, doors swinging, conversations rumbling, you've already lived half a day. You adjust your apron, tidy your hair, and brace yourself for the next endless parade of tasks. But somewhere deep inside, a tiny, sleepy seed continues to grow. One day, it will bloom into a ritual. But for now, you just keep going. You ease forward from the morning bustle into the part of the day when the kitchen heat settles, the parlor quiets, and the house briefly forgets to supervise you. This is the strange middle stretch, after the breakfast storm, before the midday storm, where the rooms seem to exhale, and you finally get a moment to listen to the silence. You step into the parlor as though sneaking into a forbidden forest, careful, cautious, scanning for witnesses like a Victorian spy in an apron. The sofa sits there, upholstered in a floral pattern that looks cheerful only from far away. Up close, it's slightly itchy, slightly faded, slightly judgmental. Yet it's the closest thing in your world to an oasis. You hover your hand above its arm, as if making contact might trigger an alarm. In a household that never stops moving, pausing feels illicit, like you're committing a tiny but thrilling crime. You perch on the edge, not sitting, not resting, just perching, the way someone does when they're pretending to tie a shoe. Your spine straightens automatically, the corset reminding you that slouching is a privilege the century has not granted. You let your eyes linger on the lace curtains, their gentle sway in the slight draft, and for the first time all day, you let your breath slow down. It feels dangerous, deliciously so. You hear footsteps upstairs and freeze, instantly transforming into a decorative statue. Victorian moralists insisted that idleness was the gateway to ruin. Too much rest, and who knows, you might end up reading novels. But you stay motionless, and the footsteps fade. Safe. For now. You shift a little deeper into the cushions. The springs make a quiet ping, like a tiny bell ratting you out. You wince. You wait. No one comes. You exhale. Your body sinks a fraction of an inch, the smallest rebellion in British domestic history. A mainstream fact slides naturally into this moment. Many Victorian homes, even modest ones, treated the parlor as a sort of ceremonial space meant to impress guests rather than comfort the people who lived in it. Sofas were more for showing than lounging. Resting on them was practically a breach of contract. But that never stopped housewives from testing the limits when the house grew quiet.
You stretch your fingers along the armrest, feeling the texture of the embroidered roses. They're stiff and ornate, like they were designed by someone who actively disliked relaxation. You close your eyes for a second, just a second, and feel the heavy wave of morning fatigue roll over you like warm sand. It would be so easy to lie back, just a little. You imagine doing it. You even tilt your shoulder a whisper's width. But then a sound, maybe a door creaking, maybe a cat, maybe your conscience, snaps you upright again. You pretend you were inspecting dust, very important dust. You rise from the sofa with the slow, guilty elegance of someone leaving the scene of a minor crime. The parlor, however, has tasted your weakness and will tempt you again. You wander into the hallway where the floorboards perform their usual symphony of complaints. Every creak feels like it's ready to announce, "She's resting, she's resting." You adjust your gait into a stealthy glide. If there were a Victorian Olympics, you'd medal in silent tiptoeing. As you move through the house, you survey the emerging opportunities. That narrow bench near the stairwell where the light falls soft and warm. The window ledge by the back door that's just wide enough for a stolen sit. The folded laundry pile upstairs, a makeshift cloud if you don't mind smelling like soap flakes afterward. A quirky tidbit curls into your thoughts. Some Victorian women reportedly pretended to search for dropped items so they could crouch, just crouch, long enough to catch their breath. Imagine explaining that to a modern fitness tracker. No, I'm not exercising, I'm avoiding collapse. Historians still argue whether these improvised rests were conscious acts of resistance or simply survival instincts slipped into the cracks of the timetable. The debates usually spiral into discussions about gender norms, domestic labor, and how society loves to guilt-trip people who want to lie down for 2 minutes. Scholars love arguing about guilt. It's their cardio. You drift into the dining room, running your hand along the polished table. The surface reflects your tired face in a warped mahogany blur. You consider placing your forehead gently against it. No one would know. But the wood is too cold, too hard, too table-y. Not ideal nap material. So you keep moving, your pace slow and swaying as though the floor is gently rocking like a ship. The exhaustion is catching up, wrapping itself around your ankles like a clingy cat. Your mind drifts. What if you could invent a moment in the day when you could just stop? You pause beside the staircase, feeling the quietness of the whole house pressing softly around you. Upstairs, your room waits, your bed waits. That lumpy but beloved mattress, that pillow that always smells faintly of lavender and hard-earned sleep. It calls to you like a siren, but you resist. You can't disappear yet. It would raise questions. Victorian households run on routine and suspicion. Instead, you climb just one step and sit. One single step. Your body folds gratefully as though you've solved the mysteries of the universe. It's a bad chair, it's a worse couch, but it's a moment. You inhale the faint scent of wood polish and lingering coal smoke, exhaling long and slow. The staircase doesn't mind. It keeps your secret. Your eyelids flutter. Gravity gets ideas. Your head nods forward for a split second, just long enough to alarm you into lifting it again. You tell yourself you're fine. You're totally fine. You're just thinking, deeply, with your eyes barely open. But the house stirs again. The spell breaks. You push yourself upright, the wood groaning beneath your hands. You return to your duties with the slow determination of someone wading through treacle. Still, something has changed. The sofa, the stair step, the window ledge, each has offered you a taste of escape, and your body is learning how good that escape feels. You haven't claimed the afternoon nap yet, but the architecture of longing is here, scattered across the rooms like breadcrumbs. And as you move back through the parlor, the sofa seems to watch you knowingly, as if it can sense that one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, you will lie down without fear, without apology, and without snapping back up at the sound of footsteps. One day you'll stop pretending your rest is accidental.
You drift from the parlor back into the soft pulse of the house, moving through narrow hallways that hold more secrets than you'd ever expect from wallpaper and wood. The afternoon light begins its slow descent, filtering through lace curtains in delicate patterns, turning every surface into a patchwork of pale gold. You step through it like someone walking across a quiet stage. The air grows warmer, dust motes swirl like sleepy fireflies, and with each room you pass, the Victorian universe nudges you closer to the moment where rest becomes not just desire, but strategy. You pause by the window, fingertips grazing the thin curtain fabric. It's astonishing, really, how much of your life depends on these fluttering barriers. The Victorians loved curtains the way modern people love phone privacy settings. Layers upon layers, sheers, drapes, valances, because heaven forbid anyone sees you sitting instead of producing domestic miracles like a steam-powered angel. You draw one curtain slightly closer to the wall, not enough to raise suspicion, but enough to soften the room's light into something less revealing. A small act, a small shadow, a small space where a woman might recline. You're not committing to it, not yet, but you're thinking about it. Your corset has opinions of its own, of course. It cinches your waist with righteous Victorian enthusiasm, reminding you that good posture is not a suggestion, it's a law. The whalebone strips dig in with the gentle affection of a stern parent who deeply believes in your spinal rigidity. You inhale, feeling the structure squeeze you like a very polite anaconda. The idea of lying down, not sitting, not crouching, but fully surrendering to gravity suddenly feels like both a fantasy and a medical necessity. You shift the corset's laces a touch, pretending it's for tidiness. Really, it's for oxygen. While adjusting, you murmur a quiet joke to yourself. At this point, my skeleton is more of a rental agreement than a permanent fixture. And yes, you chuckle alone like someone who hasn't spoken to an adult in 14 hours. It happens. You glide deeper into the room, noticing the triumphant little sunbeam landing directly on the fainting couch. Ah yes, the chaise longue, the infamous lounger of fictional swoons and melodramatic collapses. Contrary to modern imagination, Victorian women didn't faint every 10 minutes. Still, the furniture was real, and sometimes, under the guise of recovering one's composure, women could stretch out for a stolen moment. A mainstream historical detail slips into your thoughts. Fashion magazines of the era encouraged women to cultivate an air of delicate refinement. Too much vigor was unfeminine, too much exhaustion was unseemly, so you were meant to live in the impossible middle, ethereal but productive, fragile but tireless. It's a contradiction so aggressive it should come with a safety warning. But the chaise longue is here, and you are here, and gravity is making compelling arguments. You drift a little closer. Just as you are imagining yourself reclining, corset protesting, skirt rustling, your neighbor's voice wafts through the window. Mrs. Pembroke, the unofficial surveillance drone of the entire street. You freeze, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because Victorians treated gossip like an Olympic sport with a suspiciously involved scoring system.
Mrs. Pembroke is discussing someone's roses, but you know how this works. One moment it's horticulture, the next moment it's, "I saw her dozing in the parlor. Imagine." You ease away from the chaise longue. "Not today, fainting couch, not today." You slip into the hallway again, but the idea of rest clings to you like static. You imagine your neighbors whispering if they ever caught you sneaking a nap. "She napped at 3 o'clock. A 3, bold. Practically a revolutionary." A quirky tidbit surfaces as you pass a mirror. Some Victorian etiquette guides warned women never to close their eyes while sitting upright in public rooms because it suggested frailty. Imagine being so exhausted that blinking wrong counts as a personality flaw. You lean against the wall, pressing your shoulder into the plaster, and close your eyes just long enough to savor the forbidden thrill of being motionless. The house hums faintly around you, floorboards settling, a kettle pooling, the distant clatter of a cart outside. This is the type of moment no manual ever described, yet every woman knew by instinct. Historians still argue whether these quiet rebellions, these slivers of stillness carved out of impossible days, were intentional feminist acts or mere coping mechanisms. The debate usually hinges on whether Victorian women recognized their overexertion as oppression or simply called it Tuesday. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. You certainly wouldn't mind overthrowing something right now, your corset, for example. You drift up the staircase, one hand trailing along the banister. Each step feels heavier than the last, not just from chores, but from the emotional weight of always being observed. Rest is dangerous because it suggests you have needs, and needs are apparently scandalous. At the landing, you stop. The late afternoon sun paints the walls in long, sleepy streaks. You touch the fabric of your sleeve, feeling the warmth radiate into your arm. The light feels like permission. You take a slow breath, and then another. Your room is just a few steps away, your sanctuary of rumpled sheets and guarded peace. You enter quietly, shutting the door with the softest click, as if sealing a secret pact with the silence. You stand there for a moment, letting the air settle around you. The room smells faintly of lavender water and the hay-sweet scent of straw ticking in the mattress. You sit on the edge of the bed, and unlike the sofa, or the stair-step, or the window ledge, the bed does not judge you. It simply welcomes you with the tired warmth of a friend who has seen every version of your exhaustion. You slip one shoe off, then the other, your toes sighing in relief. You ease backward, slowly, cautiously, as though touching a shy animal. The mattress dips beneath your weight, a soft cradle that seems to whisper, "You made it." You lie back, carefully, corset and all, and the ceiling comes into view, a pale, familiar sky. Your body melts into the fabric. Your breath evens. Your mind unspools. You're not napping, of course. Oh, no. This is simply lying horizontally for medical research. Very serious, very important. A minute passes. Then another. Your eyes drift shut, and for the first time today, you feel the strange glowing bloom of rest unfurling inside you, not fully, not officially, not yet, but unmistakably. A seed sprouting into something inevitable. You have not invented the afternoon nap yet, but you are so very close.
You rise from the bed slowly, as though returning from a dream you weren't fully allowed to enter. Your corset shifts, your skirt drapes, and the quiet of your room clings to your skin like warm dust. You smooth your hair, pinch your cheeks lightly, an old Victorian trick to look less like someone who just experienced a moment of blissful horizontal rebellion, and step back into the hallway with the kind of practiced innocence only exhaustion can teach. The house has changed in your brief absence. The light has softened into that mellow amber drift that signals the slow approach of afternoon. Shadows stretch across the floor like lazy cats, and every sound, the kettle simmering, a distant carriage passing, the tick-tick-tick of the mantel clock, moves with a sleepy patience. You move in the same rhythm, quieter, slower, your body subtly negotiating with gravity. You make your way to the kitchen, the domain from which all Victorian energy radiates. The air is warm, alive with the faint earthy scent of loose tea leaves stored in tins, the sweetness of sugar cones wrapped in brown paper, and the woody undertone of the table worn smooth by decades of hands, elbows, and hurried breakfasts. You feel the tension in your shoulders ease a little. Kitchens, unlike parlors, never judge. You fill the kettle and set it over the fire, listening to the water slosh against the metal like a tiny tide pool. Tea is more than beverage here. It's ritual, currency, armor. The Victorians built entire portions of their day around it, and for housewives especially, it is the moment when you can inhale and pretend for 5 glorious minutes that your life is leisurely. You rub your hands together for warmth, breathing in the faint steam mixing with coal dust. The kettle begins its soft, eager murmur. You find your favorite teacup, a delicate porcelain thing with a chip on the rim that you always rotate away from your mouth, and place it on the table. When the water finally boils, you pour it over the leaves and watch the amber swirl bloom like a tiny sunrise in the cup. The first sip melts through your ribs, loosening the tight places inside you. Your whole body unclenches. It's the closest you've come today to feeling genuinely human. A mainstream fact hums into your thoughts. By the mid-1800s, afternoon tea culture had blossomed into a national obsession, partly thanks to the Duchess of Bedford, who popularized the idea of a small meal and hot tea to bridge that awkward energy slump between lunch and dinner. Of course, wealthy socialites hosted elaborate spreads, but housewives like you discovered something even better. Tea could be a socially acceptable reason to stop moving. And so you sit, teacup warm between your palms, letting the quiet seep into your bones. The mantel clock ticks steadily. The light settles in the window like golden dust. Your breathing matches the rhythm of the steam wisping from your cup. If someone asked what you were doing, you could truthfully answer, "Oh, just having tea." What you wouldn't mention is that your soul is halfway into a nap already. You lean back slightly, allowing the chair to hold your weight. You close your eyes, not fully, just enough to soften the world around you. You allow yourself exactly 3 seconds of suspended motion. Maybe 4. 5 would be risky. Of course, the universe notices your peace and decides to intervene. A pot lid clatters in the corner, loud enough to make you jerk upright like a startled cat. Your tea sloshes. Your heart does a small Victorian sprint. You glare at the pot, as though it personally insulted your ancestry. But once the brief chaos passes, you settle again, slowly, deliberately. You take another sip of tea, savoring the warmth, the flavor, the excuse. You lift your feet slightly off the floor, just a small shuffle, barely noticeable, like you're adjusting your skirts. But really, you're trying to find the angle where your spine relaxes. You shift again. The chair creaks, but not accusingly. You let your gaze drift to the window where the neighbor's laundry flaps gently in the breeze. You imagine other housewives, hidden in their own kitchens, doing the exact same thing, holding a teacup, pretending to be upright and alert while dreaming of pillows. A quirky tidbit bubbles up while you sip. Some Victorian health gurus believed tea could revitalize the female constitution by restoring delicate nerves, which is a poetic way of saying, drink this so you don't collapse face first into the bread dough. Others warned that too much tea might overstimulate you and lead to unwomanly restlessness. You chuckle quietly. If only these gentlemen understood that your greatest desire is to be exactly as restful as possible. Historians still argue whether afternoon tea created the cultural space for napping, or if napping traditions slipped in through the teacup-shaped cracks. It's a cyclical debate that goes nowhere but produces excellent conference papers. What matters is that tea gave women something precious, plausible deniability. You weren't resting, you were steeping. The kettle whistles its dying note, and you rise to refill your cup. When you sit again, your movement's slow, unhurried, almost languid. You swirl the tea absent-mindedly, watching the tiny eddies spin. The room feels warm. The clock ticks softer. Your eyelids grow heavier than they should for this time of day. You tell yourself you're not sleepy. You're just meditative, deeply, profoundly meditative. The gentle hum of the fan, oh wait, you don't have a fan. That soft whir is actually the sound of the wind pushing through the chimney flue. It lulls you anyway. You sink another inch into your chair. Your shoulders sag in a way that feels illegal. Your head tilts. Your thoughts unravel into loose, cottony threads. But then, boots on the front step. You snap upright as if launched by hidden springs. Your heart races, your cheeks flush, and for one absurd moment, you consider pretending you are polishing the table with your face. The footsteps fade. No one enters. You sag again, sheepishly. This is your life now, an endless dance between rest and responsibility, between longing and performance. And yet, day after day, the gravitational pull of rest grows stronger. You finish your tea slowly, savoring every last drowsy sip. Then, with practiced discretion, you gather your skirt, rise from the chair, and glide into the parlor where the sunlight softens into a warm, sleepy haze. The fainting couch greets you like an old friend who's decided to keep your secrets. You sit on the edge, just the edge, telling yourself you're merely adjusting your shoes. Then, you shift a bit deeper, feeling the cushions give beneath you. Your fingers trace the embroidered edge. Your pulse slows. You lie back. This time, no neighbors gossip, no floorboards betray you, no pot lids leap for attention. The room holds you gently, like it understands. Your head rests against the curved arm. Your eyes slip shut. Your body releases a breath you didn't know you'd been holding. For the first time, you allow yourself to drift, not into full sleep, not yet, but into that velvety realm where time blurs and the world softens. Your tea-calm, chore-weary body knows the truth before you admit it. This is the beginning of something. A habit, a coping mechanism, a quiet rebellion disguised as relaxation. You are inventing the afternoon nap one stolen moment at a time. And soon, it won't be accidental at all.
You wake before dawn, on the last stretch of winter. That strange threshold where the cold no longer feels hostile, only familiar, like an overlarge cloak you've worn for too many months. By now you've measured out every ration with the care of a scribe dividing ink, and your hands know the weight of survival without needing to think about it. You move through the long house quietly, stepping over sleeping forms, listening to the gentle rasp of breath from people whose lives depend, in part, on how faithfully you have portioned out each crumb of the winter stores. You check the bread chest, though you already know what waits inside. The final slabs of hard rye, the last twists of barley dough, the emergency cakes tough as old bark, but still edible. You run your fingers over the surfaces as if they're small, stoic animals that have endured the storm with you. You can smell the dry tang of the grain and the slight sour mist that clings to the older loaves. Everything is accounted for. Nothing has molded. The gods, or luck, or your own obsessive vigilance, who can say which, have carried you this far. Stepping outside, you look toward the tree line. The sky is still dark, yet the birds have begun their tentative morning gossip. Their voices sound thin at first, as if they too ration their song under the cold, but slowly they gather confidence, and the air fills with a faint, feathery chatter that feels almost like a blessing. You breathe in deep, letting the cold sting your lungs. You've learned that pain, in small doses, can be grounding, necessary, a reminder that the world beyond your walls still exists, even when winter tries to convince you otherwise. By the time the others wake, the hearth has been coaxed into a steady glow, and you've set out the day's allotment. Thin slices for each person, warmed briefly on a flat stone until the edges soften enough to chew. You watch as each pair of hands reaches forward, grateful, tired, trusting, your quiet audience in this long, cold performance. You never announce yourself as the one who has kept everything in balance. You simply observe the way routine has become its own kind of comfort, a predictable ritual in a season that loves unpredictability. As the day unfolds, you notice something different. When you step outside again, the snow near the doorway is beginning to sag ever so slightly. The top layer glistens with a faint sheen, softening under a sun that has not shown true strength in months. The air smells subtly of wet earth instead of iron frost. You kneel and press your fingertips into the snow. It gives, reluctantly, like a stubborn elder finally yielding to reason. You recognize this moment. Your ancestors would have recognized it too. It is the earliest whisper of the thaw. That evening, when you gather the small council of the household, you don't speak in declarations. You simply show them the remaining ledger of bread, the tally marks that once threatened despair, now comfortably in the safe zone. You tell them you will hold rations just a little longer, not out of fear, but out of discipline. The thaw may whisper, but winter still holds the louder voice for now. Still, you feel it in your bones as you lie down to sleep. The rhythm of scarcity has changed. You're no longer walking a rope over a chasm. You're stepping off the final stones of a long bridge, steady ground approaching beneath your feet. You close your eyes, listening to the wind tease at the walls, no longer the old predator's howl, but an almost playful sigh. And you know with a quiet certainty that soon you'll trade hard bread for fresh grain, survival for abundance, winter for the soft, green promise of spring.